All right. So this week we're going to talk about ABM or account-based marketing. So I thought a good place to start would just be getting some background on what is ABM, what is account-based marketing, and how it kind of differs from other traditional marketing tactics.
Yeah, I think it's a good topic to get into, and it's something that I feel like more and more people on LinkedIn and also our clients are either talking about trying to get ABM motions in place. So it's worthwhile just to kind of set the groundwork and what it is, what it isn't. The basics of ABM, account based marketing, is I guess the really big difference is instead of using a platform's native search filters to find a target audience that's out there, an ABM approach kind of implies that you own the audience up front, that you're kind of doing research, that you're curating a list of accounts that you want to market to, and that it's a smaller, higher quality, more, I guess, put together, well thought out group or account list that you want to attack. So instead of like this big total addressable market that you're marketing to and maybe only accessing a couple of chunks every month, there's a small targeted list of companies that you want to do business with. And the idea is to kind of make sure that they know who you are. So you're going to saturate them. You're going to have that higher level of frequency, and you're kind of going to dominate that small group of people until you kind of get a decision one way or another if you're going to have the opportunity to work with them. So I guess at the very basic level, that's the big difference between ABM and maybe a more traditional approach.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think when I talk to clients and they want to implement an ABM strategy, a lot of them are kind of coming from the perspective of I have this list of ideal prospects that I know I want to reach, or I have this warm list from sales. A lot of times is where people kind of bring that into LinkedIn and then retarget those people on LinkedIn. So they're not only getting nurtured from their sales process, but they're also getting nurtured from some of our marketing motions too.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, how do clients know if an ABM strategy is right for their business? Do you have any, I guess, qualifying features or characteristics that you look for when you're talking to different clients about whether or not to implement that ABM strategy?
One of the big things is, and I feel like it's this like growing trendy thing that people are getting into that some of them don't necessarily think it through fully, or they think it's kind of an all or nothing. So the first thing I would say is that an ABM approach to marketing, in my mind, it's not one or the other. It's not, should I leverage LinkedIn's native filters or should I take an ABM approach? You can do both. In fact, I would probably advise you do both. So who should, even start thinking about an ABM motion, or who is that best for? In my mind, it wouldn't make sense if your LTV is really low. So it wouldn't make sense to curate a list of like 50 or 100 organizations that you want to market to and put this effort around if your LTV is like less than $5,000 lifetime value for a client. Like that's probably too much work. And at that point, like it'd probably be better if you went broader, hit more of the total addressable market. So one of the things I think is key is that you have to have a higher lifetime value of a client. There also has to be a noticeably big difference between like the type of clients you typically attract and maybe the elite enterprise deals that you hope to attract. And I think the value is one of the big things. So typically when someone's putting together an ABM list, it's because securing a deal with someone on that list is usually 3 to 5 times or more valuable than the normal clients they attract. So it's something in addition to their normal motions where they go out of the way to maybe try to work with one of these dream 200 or 500 clients, or they have a very specific warm audience that already knows who they are, that they think they could move the needle with. So having a higher lifetime value service or product, having clear kind of enterprise niche maybe, where you have companies in a different category that aren't naturally just getting exposed to you, that you need to go out of your way and kind of work with them. And I guess the other third component that would make a lot of sense for me is you have to be, in order for ABM motion to be a success for you, it's not just these are the top brands I want to work with. There has to be something like these are the top 100, 200 companies that we are best equipped to serve. So if we solve a very specific problem for a very specific group, they might not naturally find us and they might not naturally be on like this one medium. So we're going to go out of our way to make sure that these people that we have the best chance of creating a long-term beneficial relationship, We're going to go after that group because not just we want the logo, but because we think that we are the best people to serve them. And we want to make sure we give it the best shot. So I think thinking about it in those terms kind of gives you a little better idea of, if it would be right for you or if it would, work or not.
Yeah, definitely. And then in kind of like a similar vein, is there or are there any businesses that you might not recommend an ABM strategy for?
Yeah, and I guess it's just the other side of the coin. So if you have a lower LTV product or service, like I honestly think you're better served like using, LinkedIn's native filters or the other marketing channels native filters, kind of having more of a broader group and kind of playing the economies of scale or leveraging those in a different way versus putting a lot of time and effort into these lists. The other thing I would say is that, yeah, I would come back to the point where just don't run it solo. Like, don't just run ABM. And if that's what you're trying to do, because there are some companies who maybe they could scale and they could grow profitably with an ABM only approach. I guess if you're a enterprise sales or enterprise software and there's accounts and they, you really want to go after those, then that makes sense. But for most other people, it doesn't make sense to do ABM only. You should have an ABM list that maybe you work, and then you should also have maybe native filters, a broader group with more runway. And then, yeah, the people that for sure shouldn't be running an ABM motion. It's also if you don't have product market fit. Like, I guess going back to the original scenario, if you don't have a specific group of people that you are just way better equipped and have an unfair advantage of helping, you shouldn't go after an ABM list just because it's a shiny group of logos that you think is more valuable. And if you're just thinking of it as terms of, hey, I want to snag these higher valued clients, that's, I think, the completely wrong approach to start ABM.
Yeah, that's a really good note too, that like, you shouldn't just have an ABM list of like, oh, these are some really top companies that we love to work with them and we don't know that much about them. We don't know if they even need our product, but
Yeah.
we just want to work with them. It's very aspirational. And I've had a couple of clients that have aspirational lists like that, but it doesn't work out if there isn't some other kind of like nurturing happening with them.
Yeah, like everyone wants to snag like Nike and Chase, but I mean, are you really the best person to serve that brand and why? And if you are, great, then yeah, sure, go after it. But if you're not, yeah, and it's just you want to work with Nike and you want to put their logo out, then yeah, probably it's not going to be fruitful
out
for you.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of balancing like the reality and the aspirational side of it is a big step too. Yeah. So if I was like a business owner and I was really keen on building that ABM strategy and I did have a list of probably warm prospects that I knew I wanted to reach, what really is step one to kind of setting the foundation for an ABM strategy, either on LinkedIn or just in general?
So in my mind, to the best of my understanding, the whole crux of an ABM, it all hinges on the list. So I would put a lot of effort and time, before you just start picking logos and creating the list, really sit down and think about, okay, where should I start creating the list? Is there a pocket of people that we are best equipped to serve? And I would start there versus, again, who are the logos we really want to attract? Because that's really easy for people to do. Like for me, yeah, there's logos like I would love to work with. They're on my radar, but I have to admit, like we are not currently maybe in the mature enough position to go after some of these logos yet. And maybe in the next year, so I would hold off on some of my Fortune 500 companies that I would love to work with. And I would say, okay, we might not be in the best position to serve them. So really think about your list, really think about who you are best equipped to serve. And then also I would look for, I think the full funnel guys on LinkedIn do a great job of talking about ABM. And one of the things that they say is instead of just a logo wish list, look at intent triggers or other things that you could compile together that kind of go back to like, okay, if they have this, this, and this, we are in the best position to serve them. So from my perspective, I'm a LinkedIn ads agency owner. And if I was create a list, I wouldn't just create logos. I would start and say, okay, we are best equipped to serve people that are already running LinkedIn. So how can we determine that? Well, there's technographic lists. I could actually download or pay for lists where I could say, here's 500 companies who have the LinkedIn Insights tag installed. And I would layer on, multiple factors to create a list where we have the best chance of being successful. So if they're already running LinkedIn ads, they have the Insights tag installed. If they're, have 50 or more employees, so they have the budget to work with us. If they, so that would be a filter. If they're in one of the 5 industries that we are best equipped to serve and have team and expertise to serve. So I would layer that in. I would layer, if I could find other sources that, hey, they're also running paid search or heavy investments in SEO and paid search. So I could create this ideal list, not from the logos, but from the conditions that exist and the technology used or the investments that they've already made that let me know that we have the best chance of being a successful fit. I would look at it from that perspective. And I do think technology used, marketing channels in use, maturity of the company, size, industry, you should look at layering in as many of those as you can to really hone in on who you have the best chance of long-term success. And that's where you should start kind of thinking through the list. But the list is everything, from my understanding.
Yeah, that's a good point too about transitioning up market, especially because a lot of the people we work with right now are a little bit smaller businesses or maybe entrepreneurs that are just getting off the ground. You can have those big aspirations, but if you don't have that good product market fit and your product can't really, provide the service that you're going to be touting it to these big brands, then it's just going to be a big disappointment for them. And it's going to leave kind of a bad taste in their mouth about your brand. And that's probably not what we want to do with some of the larger companies. So it'd be interesting too, because I know we as a company and Impactable as a startup or as a small business are looking to kind of move up market. We're in a good position to be moving up market a little bit. So it'd be interesting to have more conversations too about that transition up market and how that maybe affects our approach to ABM or our approach to just marketing in general.
Yeah, and that is something I would say we haven't done a ton of ABM for ourselves specifically. Obviously, it's something we run a lot for clients, but it is something we've been looking at more. And I would say that's a good use case. So we're naturally attracting a lot of small to mid-sized businesses. If we felt we were ready and we wanted to make that next big push to go even further up market, I do think ABM is a really good lever to say, okay, we're not naturally attracting this in our current ecosystem, but we believe we are prepared to serve, this more illustrious group. Let's put our list together. Let's really layer on the intent and the different triggers that make it worthwhile. And then let's specifically go after this, 100, 200 company list. Yeah, I think that's a good use case to do something like that.
Yeah. And we can always, have another conversation about it, because I think that'd be a really interesting story too, to just hear how we've evolved our approach to kind of bringing in some higher tier clients.
Yeah, that's true.
So just to close out here, I did want to kind of circle it back to us being a LinkedIn ads company. I also just wanted to get your opinion on what makes LinkedIn in particular an ideal partner for ABM, especially when compared to other platforms that are maybe more popular like Meta or like Twitter or Instagram.
There's a couple of reasons, and I'm sure we'll get into it on some of these other episodes about the targeting and whatnot. But a basic overview of why LinkedIn for an ABM motion. I think there's a lot of reasons why it makes a lot of sense. The first one is so it can actually cut down the cost of list creation. So from my understanding, most traditional companies, when they're building ABM lists, first they get company lists, which they have to pay for. Those are usually cheaper. Then to actually get contact data of individuals within those companies, that's a lot more expensive to build those lists, either manually or through buying the lists. And they have to do that because in any other platform, the individuals working at companies are not just identified. So you'd have to have the actual contact list before you do an ABM approach on like display or Facebook. But with LinkedIn, one of the first advantages is you could actually just come with a company list, and then you could use LinkedIn's native filters to expand to the relevant decision makers at that company. That cuts down on your need to own the contact data up front. And then the other thing it does is it makes the list dynamic. So if you do own the contact list, which is how most people approach ABM, that data degrades by I think like 30% every year because people are changing companies. But if you're using the company and then LinkedIn filters to get the people at the company, it becomes dynamic because as people leave or come into the company, the LinkedIn is changing who they're marketing to because you have the company list, and then you're layering on personal demographics after that. So dynamic lists, cheaper, less expensive list building up front, I think are really good points. The next one is just the platform in general. And I say this about LinkedIn advertising in general, but I think it makes a lot of sense for ABM. LinkedIn is one of the few, if not only platform where B2B founders, leaders are logging in and actually willing and wanting to be influenced on purchasing decisions. That I log in and yes, I want to move my business forward, but I also want to know things like what other software are my peers using? What's the new marketing strategies? Are there new sales strategies people are using? Is there vendors that people are recommending? It's a different mentality than I log into with Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or things like that. So putting LinkedIn into the mix helps you move the needle on trust and credibility with your targeted list. Because if you can get on the radar on LinkedIn and for the right reasons, the right type of content, which we'll get into, I think that has a better chance of moving the needle with these B2B leaders than other channels. And then the other reason that LinkedIn for ABM, I think makes a lot of sense as well. It just has a lot of ad coverage options. So Google and Facebook and some of these other, even like YouTube targeting, there's only a handful of ad formats and ways that you could get in front of them. LinkedIn has a ton of options as far as single image, video, text, spotlight, follower, carousel. There's so many different formats that you can use. And if the idea is that you have a small group of people that you want to kind of saturate and dominate, you're going to need probably a big mixture of ads and ad types. And so I feel like LinkedIn's inventory and assets like make a lot of sense to try to saturate a small group of people. And I guess the other thing that I really like about it, it kind of goes back to the targeting, but it's the idea of, again, at any other ABM list, they own the contact data up front. And so not only is that not dynamic and it's degrading every year, it doesn't expand to the organization as much as it could. So one of the things I like to do when I run an ABM motion is I try to expand not just to the decision makers. So it's not just the 3 or 4 people. If there's 100 companies I want to work with, I don't just advertise to the 3 or 4 decision makers at the company. Ideally, I would want to saturate and penetrate as much of that company as possible, which again could be either really expensive to build those lists of contacts up front, and that contact data would diminish. If I go to LinkedIn, I can, using the target, I can say, okay, they're part of one of these 100 companies. They're director level and above in these job functions and these, and expand to the whole marketing department or the whole, executive wing. And that way I'm getting everyone. And it's kind of back to the idea of deal acceleration. If someone in that company has the idea and brings forth the idea of working with Impactable, and 1 or 2 other people at that table or in that room have heard of us and can contribute positively, that deal moves a heck of a lot faster than if it's just, hey, we did our job when we got on the end decision makers, mind, but now he's got to fight to, hey, have you heard of these Impactable people? And hey, check out this. So if you can actually penetrate and saturate more of those organizations, which LinkedIn makes it really easy to do, that can be a really big deal accelerator.
Yeah, that's a great point too that I love about LinkedIn that I also talk about with my clients, which is what you're getting at here, like enabling champions within your client companies. So giving them some more information, saturating them with LinkedIn ads, making sure that they feel really educated and trust in our brand. And then they end up being these really great advocates within their company for us to kind of advocate to their leadership. And our sales team doesn't have to do as much work, right, on that, nurturing a little bit of those higher tier or not higher tier, but higher level executives at the company. So I love that that's also an element that we think of, because whenever people are trying to target on LinkedIn, they get so pinpointed into targeting key decision makers at the company and people with a lot of purchasing power, which is really great to have. And I think that's definitely a key area to focus on. But also having those champions within the company that kind of advocate for you can help move that needle a lot faster.
Yeah. And one thing I would add on this, and I'm sure we'll get into it in another episode too, is that people don't realize is that you can actually use, so LinkedIn is probably the one platform where, and I guess I might get some pushback from this. So traditionally, if anyone thinks of ABM, like I said, you're owning the list up front, or you at least own the company list. And it's because you've done it for a specific reason. Like, I want to target people that we are best, ready to serve the best. So I want to not nail it down by industry, by company size, by geography, by interest. I think it's possible to have an ABM approach with using LinkedIn native filters and not necessarily owning the list up front. So even though I don't know the specific names of the companies, I feel like if I build a very targeted, detailed, niche down LinkedIn list with native filters, and I say, okay, they're in the United States and they're in these two industries that I serve from these company sizes, and it's this level of seniority in these job functions, and they also like content from dark social and retargeting. Like, you can layer on interests or layer on product interests, and I could create, in my mind, a list that would rival what someone might build outside, because without LinkedIn filters, they're doing all that manual research, they're building that. So I think if someone thinks that, if I build a list of 3,000 companies inside of LinkedIn filters, that's not ABM. Like, just because I don't actually know the names of those 3,000 companies or those 3,000 people, it's not still built with a high, it's still built with very similar high quality. And the other thing that I like to think about that with ABM is you can use it on the retargeting as well. Like, you could say, hey, they visited my website or company page or interacted, and they're part of this ABM list. So if you did have a dream like 500 company list, and you could say, okay, if any of their leadership stumbles on my website, I want to like retarget them over here. Almost everyone just thinks of ABM as like this cold approach. It's an ABM list that you build on the front end, and then you go, try to target the crap out of them. But what if people who are on your list have already been to your website and there's, 300 plus of those? Like, wouldn't you want to like pull them into retargeting and market it to that way? Or if you look at the demographic breakdown of your ABM list and those people already exist in your website traffic, so there's warm website traffic of people from the 3 industries you want to target, the company size with budget, the seniority levels with buying decision, but they're not on your ABM list, or you don't know the names of the company, but they're actually warm. It makes no sense for me to say, or for me to think like, no, we just want to load cold ABM lists. And if any of those people that look similar and already know who we are, we don't want to target them because that's not ABM. Like, in my mind, we could get into that. It could be a whole topic, but I think it's possible to do it, to think of ABM a little less traditionally than most do.
Yeah, definitely.